We're not live yet.
We're getting there. Debbie, no, Debbie. Debbie likes to watch the,
We're streaming behind you.
Yep, it's all.
Great, it's my bad.
It's your back.
Thank you, Rick.
Believe me, nobody's watching. Debbie's probably the only one.
If Debbie. I mean, government's, very, very exciting to watch.
Why did you spend that
government.
$5 million at a public meeting? We had it videoed and live streamed on YouTube.
Oh, you're doing your budget now.
Yeah.
Jack just did his budget for 6 hours.
Wait. They had a 6-hour budget meeting
Yep, on Saturday.
Yeah, so
on a
don't-
Saturday.
there you go. So
Saturday.
let's talk, you want to complain about person?
Hang on a second.
Okay.
How many dollars are we talking?
2 million
2 million? So you figure.
or 2.4.
Yeah, figure it out. How many hours? We're gonna do a
15
weekend
times
session.
Well, we probably have the same line
210
items as
hours.
all-
There you
So
go.
you're ready for a 210 marathon budget
They
meeting.
probably have a lot of the same. They have to get, so I've been playing tennis and pickleball.
Yeah.
And,
You're a pickleball person.
I just started pickleball.
Do you like it?
I do, I love it.
Yeah.
And because you have to play with the mask on at the club, I'm like, I'm going down to the field. And so my girlfriend, and she goes, you're not something there. These courts are awful. So I texted him, I put little notes on, get money for tennis court.
Is it in there?
They put in to get a grant.
Okay, DCNR. Well, hopefully they get it.
For sure. I need a tennis court if you want me to be happy.
Yeah, what's the
Public. Was gonna say, we're online. What'd you say?
Oh, yeah. All right, we will start before I slip up. Because I will slip up. We will call to order this, the 18th? 17th, this Tuesday, November 17th, quarterly meeting of the Lawrence County Retirement Board. Vanessa, please call the roll.
Deputy Controller Pestafine,
Here.
Treasurer Rapone,
Present.
Commissioner Spielvogel,
Here.
Commissioner Vogler,
Here.
Commissioner Boyd.
Here. We have a quorum. I will note for the record that we are being live streamed. This is going out to our YouTube channel. We're also being recorded internally through the use of our microphone when we compile for the purposes of compiling the minutes. Are there any public comments at this time? That's shocking. No public comment. We will move on and I'll turn the meeting over. Any comments from my colleague before we get this thing rolling?
There's a financial report I handed out to everybody in the minutes from the last meeting.
Okay.
Oh, gotcha. I didn't see the minutes either. In that case, before we turn it over to Sarah, I'll take a motion to approve.
Richard Ridley.
Is Rich's?
Oh, here. There you are, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, give my colleagues a minute to look those over and take a motion to approve the minutes. From both May 19th and August 25th.
I'll move for approval of both minutes that have been submitted.
Good motion and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Questions on the motion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. And with that, we'll turn it over to Sarah Wilson for everything else.
Good morning. So we have a couple things to go over. I have your county, PA County database report. I have the quarterly report. I've also handed out a perspective on the election. We'll just go look at some of the highlights on that and then an update. So why don't we just start quickly with the Pennsylvania County report. That's this one right here, the database. As you know, we do this every year. We do it for not only our clients, but we also do it for every county in the state of Pennsylvania. We offer them if they would like to participate in this. And 62 eligible counties, a little bit less participated this year, we think probably because of, with COVID and everything. So we got 49% participated and a 79% participation rate. So what we do is, this is, I think, is a really good way to look at your plan and how you're doing against your peers, which is just kind of some information for you. If you want to turn very quickly to page 4, I know we did this last year, but I always like to go through this figure. If you look at page 4, we look at your defined benefit plan. We look at your county contribution, your investment earnings, then we look at your defined benefit plan and expenses and benefits. As you know, we have really looked at the liabilities. We review your actuarial report and we planned your investments around your liabilities. You can't have a plan managed without understanding the liabilities. So we try and keep expenses down and we try and keep that green part funded. That's your investment returns. And then we also know your benefits. Your benefits are always going to be coming out. If you look at your cash balance, it's account contributions from the county, contributions from the employee, your investment earnings, and then you know the expenses and benefits. So those are your 2 plans. If we turn the page to page 5, real quick, your county is represented in orange. And you can see that when we look at the county class, you are a 5th county class. Most of the counties are actually 6. We look at your ADC in the back. So in 2008, average county ADC for 19 counties was 1.9. Following the stock market crash of 2008, it raised 119% to 4.1 million. This is your average. Even though the equity markets rebounded strongly since 2009, the average county ADC continued to increase through 2012, and that was because of the smoothing effect that they came in and did in 2008. So you wouldn't the next year have to come in and put this massive contribution into your plan. So the average ADC has dropped over the next 2 years and has remained fairly flat since then. In 2020, the average ADC of the 19 continuously reporting counties. So we took that and went through that because it wouldn't have made sense to add somebody who hadn't done that. Is 0.8% above their 2019 contribution. So it's, it's under 0.10%, or 0.10. So it's not bad at all, and you see where you are. So you really have leveled off in 2019, 2020. We'll have to see where this year comes off because we know we had a great year in 2019. This year's been a little bit of an up and down, to say the least. So we'll see where that goes. And then we turn the page, your actual assumed rate of return is at 7%. We know we've lowered that. And you're actually in a very good place. There's still a lot of counties at 7.5. And as we've talked, as we've diversified this portfolio, 7.5 is going to be very hard to reach. Projected salary increase assumptions, you can see here at 3.5. You can turn the page.
Is there a reason that we're at 3.5%? I know our union contracts are increasing next year, what, 2.75? I don't think, it's been a while since we've been at a 3.5 rate. Is that related to the actual salary increases in this building, or is that another thing?
That's related to when you look at the salary increase assumption is to project future salaries.
Okay.
So you're projecting that, and that depends on what you're giving every year to your employees, because once their salary goes up, their contribution in their pension fund is going to go up. And you look at that, the average salary increase for participating counties is 3.9%. The majority of counties are below 4.5. That's also because you've seen your budgets really stretched, going forward. We've seen that it's basically been that.
No, but Mr. Boyd makes a valid point, I think, in that, and David, you can help me here, in the past number of years, whether it be our union contracts or the each year's increase to non-union employees has only been averaging maybe between 2.5% and 3%. So I think that 3.5 at this point is a little bit high.
And that could be that when they look back, they project forward, and we actually get this from your actuarial report. So I can reach out to your actuary and look at that, and it may be in the next year or two that's gonna update and you'll see it lower.
Okay,
When they do look at it, they've gone past, they use historical data, a look at that, and then they try and project out like 5 to 10 years on where it looks. So it could be just an average, you could have a 1 year up or a couple years down. Historically, counties use 4.5% for their salary increase assumption, but now they've come back and most of them are using about 3.5.
Let me ask you this, if it were to drop, let's say it drops down to 3, what would the impact of that be on on the county's contribution to the pension fund? Or would it matter?
It would matter a little bit, but it matters more what it will do, so look at your funding. So let's say you drop it down and then you've had 3 great years of market growth, then you're gonna see your ABC go down. But let's say you've had 3 years of really bad market growth, and even though that's dropped down, probably not gonna see it change the funding level. So it interacts with are you meeting your contributions? Interacts with what your actual rate of return is. Then it will look at your mortality tables, it'll look at, where the liabilities are, and then all of that will come together and then look, they all have to interact together. It's not just one thing. Now, if you went out and gave everybody 20%, that's gonna have a huge impact. But because it's, 0.4, 0.5 off, it's not really gonna have an impact unless you see everything else. So,
Gotcha. That might be, yeah, like you said, that might be something to look at in the future, is decreasing that rate for better or for worse. Anyway.
and then you can look at the majority of counties, your mortality rate that you're using on January 2020, the actuaries published in the report about the mortality tables. This is the first time that SOA has studied public retirement plans mortality separately from the private sector. According to the SOA, the financial impact of implementing the new mortality tables will vary based on each individual job category, as well as the member's age and other demographics. The SOA cautioned that plan sponsors should work with their plan actuaries to understand the impact of tables on their pension fund to how to incorporate urging mortality and mortality improvement. So for a while, we saw the mortality was older. People staying in the plans, people were living a lot older. We've seen it actually, they're not living as longer. So they updated a lot of those plans. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of years. COVID may have a lot, depending on when they go do those studies. So I think next year we'll probably go back to the actuaries. And let's just make sure that we're updated, we're using the right mortality.
Did we update it earlier in the year, mortality tables?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we look at the cost of living. As we know, number of counties, over 45%, you're right there with, have not given a COLA, cost of living adjustment. 3 to 49 participating counties granted a COLA for the year 2020. It does require that you look at it every other year to determine if you're going to do that. And sometimes when you look at what the cost of living is going to be, it's a lot of counties said, we just can't do it right now for that. And look at where you were in 2008, bumped up in 2017, in 2019, and then it went back down. And that was because you had markets in 2018 that were negative. You're right on the W method for a number of counties. Everybody is using that. And then let's turn to 1314, the page that everybody wants, which is how am I doing compared to everybody else? So you can see 5-year returns. You are really at the top. You are averaging 7 to 8%. So you and 17 other counties, 16 other counties are right there. But the majorities of the counties are 6 to 7%. So you really had some outperformance. And then go look at your 10-year return. You're right there on top. We look at 2019, you did right where the average counties did. Now, one of the things is that you have to remember when you look at these returns, you have to understand that we always say in an up market, especially last year, you did extremely well last year, but we know, as we're going to talk about in this quarter's return, is that value continues to underperform growth. And that is largely because you've got a market that managers are really, really trying to get some kind of quick turn on performance. Usually we will see everybody flocking to value. We'll talk about that a little bit more. They have not in the last 2 years. Look at where you were in 2018. You did very well. And then 2017, you were in the top of all the counties. And then we go look at 2014 returns. We look like, so we took over, and you can see with the board, you've all done such a great job of rediversifying, looking at different asset classes, and that has really helped to grow your performance. And then, let's see, turn to page 21. You can just see where you are in active participants and kind of in the median. Retired participants, you're a little bit lower, about of counties, and then terminated vested participants, you are actually very low in regards to other counties.
Terminated vested participant, is that an individual who would have invested in the fund who died?
Yeah, they're gone, they're out of,
Gotcha.
or they took the entire rollover.
Oh, okay.
We would have probably a nice word for die.
I like the way,
Their morbidity is high.
you're gone from the plan.
And then there's just a market recap if you want to recap, but we'll really be going over the market. And are there any questions on this? I always think it's a good tool. I know Pat Twing and I are going to be doing the controllers conference online December for CE credits and go over this as well. All right.
Any questions from colleagues?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's go to your quarterly report. Then I've got a nice update that I handed out. Then we'll just talk a little bit about where the market's going and how we see that. And I just want to take you quickly to Exhibit 1. I always think it's nice to have a little bit of where we are, as a firm when we look there. And two of the recent hires, we hired Pat McDowell, who is taking care, he is leading our OCIO committee. He was a recent hire, he's the senior vice president, and I know I'm with him twice a week, we're on a Teams meeting, and we're reviewing the investments, we're reviewing the managers, we're reviewing their portfolios. So there's a lot going on there. And then Lauren Ward is a client analyst that we hired in Westchester, and she will be working with me on some of the accounts. We really like her. She worked for another consulting, and she will be working with just getting all the data together and everything. We are hiring 2 more analysts out of the Westchester office. We're hiring the performance analysts. Mind you, it's all of them virtual. So it's been a very interesting hiring process. Libby, who works in our office, is now working with Chicago to do all the hiring throughout the firm. So we've really seen some growth in the Westchester office. And when we look at clients, we were just named the consultant for Pennsylvania at PMRS. So we've just taken over that account. So we've had some really nice growth, even during a pandemic. You can see number of employees, we're still committed to hiring as many employees as that we can. Number of clients is growing, and then it's been 10 years since our OCIO, and we have 56 OCIO clients, discretionary clients, and we now manage $8.9 billion under that program that you're in. So we really have seen some nice growth. You know, we are still committed. We know that our clients are definitely struggling during this time. We have made a huge effort on doing as much volunteering that we can, or being able to support. Marquette really has supported a lot of our local clients, you know, doing food banks and everything else, so we continue to do that. Let's talk a little bit about the market environment. And you know, this is ever changing. I used to look at, you know, once a week. We always now look that the market's ever changing every week. Interestingly enough, you know, unemployment came lower than what we expected. Today, consumer spending, unemployment was lower and consumer spending was lower. You would think with more, you know, better unemployment, you would have better consumer spending, especially right now. And I think this is where you're really gonna see the impact of this epidemic is gonna start reeling its head in the market. We look at your US economy rebounded at historic pace in the third quarter. GDP increased by a staggering 28.5%. So we were expecting economic growth to be moderate in the fourth quarter. You can look at that spike. So, I mean, this is really, it's bounding. Look at the graph. If you look at second quarter, we know everything just shut down. So any spike is going to look very large from where it is. So we kind of have to put that a little bit in perspective. We look at personal income went up, but that was because people were starting to get back to work. That's going to probably go down as well. Interestingly enough, people are saving more now than they were a couple of years ago. So usually when we see the economy going up, you know, we see good returns, we see your 401k growing. It's usually you should be saving then, and we know that Americans have really not been saving. One thing that they have been doing this year is saying, you know what, let's take a step back, let's look at saving a little bit more, which is usually a little bit different.
Is part of that the due function of the restaurants are closed, the entertainment venues are closed, the economy's down? If you don't have anywhere to spend money, the only alternative is to save it.
Right, so you don't have people traveling as much,
Mhm.
everybody, you know, canceled their beach houses, you know, we're talking about the extra money. I think you also have the fear of maybe
Mhm.
2 workers in a home, now down to 1 worker. You look at, you know, I can't do my full-time or my part-time job because the kids are staying home, somebody's gotta watch them for school, you know, so I think there's a lot of that. I think that, there's also, you know, you've had a lot of fear on what was gonna happen with the election. That does take, usually fourth quarter is this wonderful quarter, and we come in and everybody's really happy, you know. End of third quarter, we see, you know, everybody's kind of calm. That has not been the case with this election. We'll talk about that later. So yeah, I think you have that. I think it's more fear in saving than it is, well, maybe I didn't need to go out to that extra dinner. You're right, they're not. But you know, when they issued that stimulus check, you could not go and buy a big TV. I mean, you know, big screen
Yeah,
TVs,
right.
they were sold out.
Yeah.
You know, there were certain things that everybody said, okay, I've got some extra money, and that really helped the economy,
Yeah.
believe it or not, that 24, I mean, and that was what it was supposed to do.
Mhm.
I think with them not being able to come another stimulus, and we're probably not gonna see that till the end of, beginning of next year, I think we're gonna really start seeing this in the market numbers on there. And you can see when we talk about stimulus, look at what happened in the third quarter on page 3. You look at the US economy, 44% of fiscal stimulus, the percentage of the GDP, 44% was from stimulus. So we look at that, you know, we're gonna have to pay that back eventually, down the road.
Right.
That's not, being political on either side. It just
No.
means that it's gonna have to get paid back. Look at where China is. UK actually had the lowest amount. We know they came out, 2 weeks ago and shut down again. They opened up fully, now they're completely shut down. We look at the global economy and look at how it went down. Look how it's bumping up. UK was actually up. We look at the Eurozone,
So that 44%, that's in addition to consumption, investment, and
Right.
government spending. That's, they say we didn't spend enough. That's amazing.
it is. And then we turn the page and look at the global assets. So equities had a nice quarter. They were up 9.2. They were down year to date 5.4. Then we looked at October and we were looking at some negative returns. We're back up, so there's some good news. International equities are still struggling. Commodities are struggling. US REITs, we'll talk about that, how that affects you. We know real estate is going to struggle. We look at fixed income markets, remain positive across the risk spectrum in third quarter. Core bonds returned 6.60, and I am going to talk a little bit about your fixed income. I would like to talk about diversifying. I think you really need to diversify. I think what we'll do is we'll talk about that, put an addendum together, get you to come and sign that. So we'll talk a bit down there. Because when we look at fixed income, we know that it's done well. The high yield had done very well for you. We knew that was a short term fix, but we also want to be able to go look out for the next 2 to 3 years. Right now, we know that, interest rates are basically zero. That's going to depend on what happens in the economy. We don't expect that they're going to raise them, but it is really going to see on what happens in the next year with the economy. Outside the energy sector, which was now 19%, all sectors finished in the black for the quarter. You can see that. Growth stocks outperformed again, value stocks with the former outperforming the latter by more than 35% points in 2020. You will see that. That reflected a little bit in your performance. Also, one of the things that we continue to see are those 5 stocks moving, as the market. It has been moved. So we have seen it's been Apple, Facebook, Amazon, Alphabet, and Microsoft have been driven and were combined now to make up 25% of the S&P 500. So the 5 stocks moving it. Would it be great to be in those 5 stocks, Jess? Absolutely. Would you want to have been in those 5 stocks if the
No.
market went down? No, but it's the rebound. So it has been very hard for managers, especially conservative managers, that we don't want them overweighting in this market. So while performance is good for you, you are going to see that when you look at the benchmark, because 25% of that benchmark right now the performance is made up of 5 stocks. So usually, when I go out and we always, go to that page, how did I do versus the market? This is really a time to start understanding the market. It's also not a time to deviate from the managers that you have. It's just one of those years that you can't really predict on there. But we know going forward you've done well. Then we just turn the page, we look at the US equity markets, look at the year-to-date performance. And there, I just want to point out that FAAMG, that's those stocks, those 5 stocks, look where they are. And then look at the rest of the market. So the bottom 495 are negative where those stocks are up. So yes, you've got your managers have all got exposure into that, but it's been a very tough for especially value managers. These 5 stocks now account for nearly 22, leading the index, of which we talked at its most concentrated level since 1997. So that's where we started the dot-coms coming out, and everybody was, going into technology. That was beginning of that bubble. So we see that there.
So that brings up another interesting question. Do you think we're at this bubble right now with those companies?
I think eventually it's gonna get slower. I think, look at Amazon. I mean, look how well they have done. But interestingly enough, I was talking to a private client and said, look, it just went down. Should I get out of it? They had secretaries, a high net worth client. And then it immediately went back up. And so they're looking at the individual shares and they said, what's happening is that we as institutional investors have to make sure we are on target on policy. So when things go down or they go below, out of policy, institutional managers are really driving that stock. It is not the individual stock. Do I think we're at a bubble? I don't know on those. I think what you've got is until you see the market kind of go like this, instead of all up and down, that it has been, and you take some of the volatility out, those stocks are going to continue. And if you could play those every day, and there are managers or individuals who do that, you can make a lot of money, lose a lot of money on timing. I would like to see them calm down. To see the other, and this is what is a little bit of a concern when you look at the economy, the rest of the stocks, those are a lot of companies that are in the United States, and they are struggling. So you really kind of want to see that part of it calm down. So would it be great if that bubble was over? In some terms, absolutely, because it would mean a lot of the volatility is out of the market. And then we look at fixed income, look at the yield curve, we look at the high yield spreads, you look at where they were. So you look at through January, at the end of that graph below, you can see that bump. So that's when we took advantage of that high yield. We put that in there. We're still comfortable with high yield. Might or might not get out of it. We look at it at least once or twice a week. The analysts are looking at it every day. We're always getting something on it. So we're comfortable where you are. The Federal Reserve $750 billion corporate bond buying program has calmed investor fears over default risk, resulting in high yield spreads tightening to the long-term average about 500 basis points compared to mid-March peak of more than 1,000. So we've seen it come down a little bit, those spreads. So we're just gonna sit there, we're only a couple percent in them. Are there any questions on the market? All right, let's talk about how you did for the third quarter, and then we will update you. So you had, at the end of September, you had a market value of $86 million. For the third quarter, you returned 4.8%, had a net investment gain of $4 million. For the trailing 3 years, the annualized return is 6.8 with an investment gain of 16.2. And since inception in 2014, so if we went back to that database report, you can see where you've gone up. You've annualized 7.2% per year. So you've met your actuarial assumption and you've had a gain of $33 million. So you've done quite well long-term. We look at the equity composite return 7.2 for the third quarter. Global equity return 7.5. International, we know, is struggling right now. They did 4.8. And as I said, the theme with growth stocks is outperform value stocks again in 2020. We look at fixed income. Year to date, fixed income returned 7.3. If you remember, this time last year, we were almost thinking when I came out to this meeting that fixed income could have been in negative territory, and then it really bounced back in the fourth quarter. And then your high yield manager returned 5.7 for the third quarter. So that little bit that we took out of your fixed income returned 0.9, you actually returned 5.7. So it's still a good call. And then we're going to talk about your fixed income portfolio structure on there. Are there any questions? All right, so let's look at this sheet that I passed out because this is always the nice news. So I ran your performance for October and your market was down, you were down. So then I said, you know what, let's go look at last Friday, Friday the 13th, when we did the last value. You're at 89.9 million. So you're almost at the 90 million mark. So we have seen what this market has done. So October, you're negative. In November, the market, really kind of calmed down with the election, and it's gone back to about 89.9. So you're in very, very good shape.
If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, David, I think that's the highest it's ever been.
So you're probably right.
Thank you.
Totally correct.
And that's interesting, it's the highest it's ever been in the
In this-
Forgive me again, is that your recollection
Yes,
too?
it is.
Wow.
Yes, it is. It's amazing.
So, trailing year, you've, done 6.6, and we talked about that in section. And then I wanna turn to page 7 and 8 and, talk to you a little bit about the fixed income, but let's just review some of, now you can see your total equity composite. We always like to bring up numbers, but you also have to bring up, what's happening. Year to date, that has changed, but you were negative 1.2 versus the market of 2.5, and we're okay with that. Normally, we wouldn't see that. We always say, market is down, we protect you in the downturn. We know that the first quarter, with all the volatility in the pandemic, nobody can keep up, and that's where your underperformance happened there. But you've done 7.6, and when we go look at your American funds, your manager did exactly what you wanted them to do, US equity composite. They did a negative 3% versus the market of 11%. They were 1 year 4.4 positive, the market was a negative 3.9. So that's your active manager. And then we know that Eaton Vance Smith has just been a very small cap, it's been a very hard place to look. They underperformed, but then they have outperformed for 5 years since inception. They've done 10.7 versus 7.1. That's annualized. We're comfortable with them. And then the other three that make that up is actually, you look at that, is index. We look at your global managers. AB Global, we added in July. We thought that they are actually, you can see that they've struggled a little bit. We think long-term, this is going to be actually a good manager for you. And then MFS usually is a low volatility because it's high volatility. They've had a little bit of an issue, but they're still right on their benchmark. They've done 7.3 annualized over the course of the time that you've had them in your portfolio. We do know global and international managers are just going to struggle. You're just going to have to ride through that way. If we look at them, we're making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we can pull them at any time. We look at Hartford Schroders, which has been great. And even though it's a multi-cap value, year to date, they're down 13, the market's down 17. So they've been very positive for you. And then we know the total Vanguard Total International Stock Index. We look at real estate. Real estate, as we know, is really going to struggle. And that because you're in corporate real estate. This is a long-term, 10, 15, 20-year investment. Like your infrastructure, we've got you in the line for the infrastructure. And we had, I had another client call me who goes, okay, should we get rid of infrastructure now because of what's going to happen in the election? I'm like, no, this is counties. These are long term that you just want to get a good rate of return, and it's coming out of your fixed income, really, when we look at that. So it's been a tough year for them. We're going to lower your percentage by about 3 to 4% in your fixed income. We've got that in the call to do that. And what we're going to look at doing is actually, while we're waiting for your private infrastructure, we're going to go in and put you in listed infrastructure. And we're going to move that money once we get that, put that in there, and then we'll move the infrastructure that's listed, which we can go buy right now, into the JP Morgan infrastructure when they do the call for that. And then we look at your US fixed income composite. I know last about 16 months ago, we changed to the Barclays aggregate composite, and you've got the Fidelity US Bond Index Fund. Let's take out the Lord Abbett. Lord Abbett's done very well. It's done 17% since March for you in fixed income. It's only 2% of the portfolio. We would never put more in there. But what I would really like, to ask you today is, I think we need to look at your US fixed income. I think we need to go back to the government credit intermediate index, which we would send that paperwork to you. It gives us some way to restructure that. I don't think you should be only an index. At the time, it made sense when Michael had come and had talked about that. Previously, it made sense to do it. I think we really need some active managers in there and the way we're looking at fixed income right now. So I would, ask that you change your benchmark to the intermediate gov credit. So we're gonna need you to do a motion for that if you're comfortable with that. And then once we get that, I'll email over the paperwork and then we'll restructure in the next month or so your fixed income. I just think it makes much more sense. And then one of the things I would like to look at, since you're almost at 90 million, is maybe look at not just a mutual fund. Let's maybe look at getting, and we're gonna go back and discuss this with the OCIO, look at getting a separate account manager. You are large enough for that. I think we're gonna start looking at that for your equity. We do have discretion over that, that's part of our job. So that is some of the things, but I always like to kind of talk about it with the client when we're making these kind of changes. I would like to look at possibly putting you into a small cap manager that's not just a mutual fund. We'll look at the pricing on that. We've got a really good one that I've put into other counties that have really seemed to be benefiting their performance. And then fixed income, I would like to change benchmark, go in immediately, restructure the fixed income into mutual funds, and then we'll possibly look at getting you separate accounts there. We are starting to look at private equity. I know this is a lot. We will do that next year. We will do an education on that next year. I think there's too much. Let's look at the basics. We've made a great choice by doing infrastructure. Let's change the fixed income around, and then I'm going to start looking at some separate account managers for you.
So specifically, what's the motion that you're looking for?
I'm looking at a motion to change your fixed income benchmark from the Barclays US Aggregate to the Lehman Government Credit Intermediate Fund Index.
Okay. Any comments, questions from my colleagues on that?
I'm in support of what you're recommending. I request perhaps in the future, if you are making similar type recommendations, if you'd be kind enough to drop a one-sheet document on paper stating your recommendation so we can have that as part of the record, if that wouldn't be too much trouble.
And that's absolutely, and what I can do is I can write it up. If you're fine for the end of the year, we could do it next year if you would like.
I'm okay with doing it now.
How about if I send you out an email to everybody this week about, right, I agree, I apologize for that. When I looked at your fixed income yesterday, I was reviewing the accounts and I went back and did all that, I was prepared for the meeting. I looked at it and I probably should have brought the paper, I didn't think about that, I was looking at it late last night, is I realized that you do not have the diversification. So it's kind of not off the cuff, it's something we've been looking at, but I really think that I will absolutely bring that.
And thank you, but again, I'm comfortable with moving
Right,
forward
yes.
today with what you're proposing. No problem on my part.
Okay, and I will get that out to you normally. I know this was kind of short notice with doing that. It's just, we look at these all the time. And then when I went back and looked at your performance last night for today, I realized, there's something different in this. And then I thought, I think we need to look at the fixed income.
And Dan, to your point, maybe next year, I've noticed 2 boards of the 4, I'd say probably 3 boards of the 5 that we serve on, don't go through that resolution process
Right.
like we do in the commissioners meetings and like we do in the salary board meetings.
Right.
It'd probably be helpful to start compiling official resolutions on paper, putting those into a booklet to where we're able to go back and say, okay, on this
We
date,
did this.
Yeah.
here's the record,
Right.
here's the vote, here's the resolution. Then we have that for the next
I would
2
agree.
sessions.
I would agree.
Well, too, because you do have to do a resolution don't you, for this.
We can do it in the form of a motion, and we'll just give it a resolution number, and then somebody can go in, probably the controller's office, and
I know
just
we
type
keep
up
everything.
a form.
We keep everything you've ever done,
Mhm.
in there.
Well, and our minutes will reflect it as well, but I agree with Commissioner Boyd, moving forward.
Yeah, next year we
Use
start
that.
Right, because
Process.
we will have some changes next year,
And-
so we'll definitely, I'll work on getting that.
Maybe at that point, as chair, the controller's office, maybe Dave and I both, or if every member of the board wants to participate, reach out to you and have a conference call a week before this meeting to get everything on paper, get everything together.
Right,
Like
right.
formalize this a little bit
Right,
more than what
that's
we
a
have
great
right now.
idea. And then what we could,
Forgive me, I agree with that. What we want to make certain is that there's a minority of the board doing that. So maybe just you and the controller, just so we don't have a quorum doing a pre-meeting meeting.
Mhm.
But I like the idea.
yes,
Okay, that's what we'll start, that's what we'll do
Right.
for starting in 2021 then is, if you're able to accommodate that, we'll have a meeting.
always accommodate that.
I mean,
I will be at home still working. There's no travel in the foreseeable, no conferences. I was just saying that, CCAP is this weekend.
I know.
So, yeah, we'd have been driving to Dauphin County this weekend.
Right, so that's what it's at. So,
Yes.
That's how we'll structure it. But that being said, are there any other comments, questions, concerns on the
No.
proposal?
No.
I'll take a motion for that from any member of the board.
So moved.
Second,
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? And Dave, would you be able to read back that motion?
Yes, we are moving our benchmark of the fixed income from Barclays to Lehman's, correct?
yes.
And we'll be able to formalize that with an official resolution, we're just doing the vote now, and then we'll go back afterwards.
Hey, do you want me to send you like an email
Yeah, that's fine.
and then we can get that and then we'll get that? Okay, great.
So we have a motion and a second, no further discussion, question on the motion, Vanessa, please call the roll.
Deputy Controller Prestafine,
Yes.
Treasurer Cohen,
Yes.
Commissioner Spielvogel,
Yes.
Commissioner Vogler,
yes.
Commissioner Boyd.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you.
Right, right, and you'll start seeing those changes on there. The last thing I did was I put this in, and you don't really, it's every meeting that I've gone to or done virtually, have always said, what does Biden win mean for the financial markets? So, we look at the second page, and I just thought this was something that if you've got time to read it, it's a really nice perspective that we put out. Our analyst did this, our top analyst, director of research, Ben, who does director of fixed income, Samantha, consultant, Dave, who does non-US equity. So we really put a panel of them. We've been watching this because this is such a big question, especially, we've got stimulus packages that they're trying to get through. We look at this presidential election, which has been, a big debate in itself. And we look at where this market's going. And, one thing I do want to remind you when we talk about the market is that we know we're due for a correction. We've talked about that. We've talked about, going in for a correction. So,
Right.
it might not just be what's happening with COVID. We might eventually, we're gonna see a correction to this market. When we'll see it is anybody's guess. But a large part of this article, which I think might be helpful to you as board members, is to look through it because they are gonna talk about the stimulus. So to look at the, where policy's gonna go, and it just might give you a nice overview of where it really, where we look the next 18 to 24 months are going. Is there any questions? Well, again, I just wanna thank you so much. I think you're in good shape. We'll continue to work to make sure that, you weather the storm, well, and, we will continue to look at different ways of diversifying the portfolio if the market calls for it, if we need to do it, but I think you're in very good shape in the next 6 to 9 months. We can't always think of these. such a great client. I always like coming out here and saying,
Thank
"Oh,
you."
and sorry I can't see you at the conferences, we can't go out and do anything. It's just been a very sad 2020 from that.
Could I pose a question? It might be towards either Mr. Prestipine or perhaps Sarah. And again, my fading memory is why I need your help. I seem to recall, Rich, you might be able to help me too. Is there some action we always take toward the end of the year as this board where we either adjust something or implement something? And if there is, I'm not coming up with it. And maybe you can check with
Talking
Dave.
about the interest rate, maybe?
I can't recall, and that's where I need your help.
I think we always do that, yes.
So will there be a need possibly for us to have a special meeting between now and the end of the year to do that? Or does it have to be done every year?
I don't, does it have to be? I don't know that it's, we always do it. I don't know that
You
it's.
always do it. I think you do have to set the interest rate every year.
Could maybe you consult with David?
Yep.
And again, we may have to have a brief, wouldn't have to have Sarah come back,
No,
but it's possible that we may have to have a brief.
yeah, I do recall
Do you
doing
recall that?
without
Yes.
Sarah's presence in December.
Yes, you did it.
Did you say without?
I said without Sarah.
Yes,
I was
yeah,
operating
Done
in
by
December
email. Yeah.
Right.
to do such.
Okay, so I guess my memory's not as bad as
My
I.
memory's good,
Yeah, but I didn't remember the details.
Yeah.
I figured one of you would.
but I do
Just not
recall
that.
gathering in December to meet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
December 31 it is.
You know, we will be open that day. The courthouse is open
Yes.
on New Year's Eve day. But again, this doesn't.
No, well, you can always call me if you need anything. The other question is, we usually set the meeting
The meetings.
schedules for next year, and my only suggestion is, do we want to do that, or do we want to look at where we are in January? It won't be till February, March, but do we want to just see where we are? Do you want to set all the meeting dates?
Well, they've generally been the second or third Tuesday of the month. And, third Tuesday of the month.
There's a
Quarterly.
conference that always comes up in August, remember? But if they don't have it,
Yeah, well, we can always advertise them, and then we can always, if we have to make an adjustment, we can put a legal ad into that effect. And then also, you know, if things are still bad in February,
Right.
don't I, here again, my
Yeah,
memory, don't I
yes.
recall one of the meetings you were on a screen?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I can always do that.
Mhm.
That'll be something we add to the agenda for December 31.
You set the meeting date,
The meeting dates.
okay,
And
and
we'll
then just
collaborate
somebody
on
let
that.
me know.
Sure, absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
Anything further from you, sir?
Any questions on?
Thank you.
Great report.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Excellent.
Anything further from any of my colleagues? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, is there any discussion? Hearing none, question on the motion, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, the same sign, motion carries. Lawrence County Board of Retirement is adjourned.
Very good.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
You too.
Oh, definitely. Oh,
Take care,
I
Richard.
know, Christmas everything.
See you, Melissa.
I love this.
Take care.
Listen, I feel,
Oh,
what is it?
okay, actually.
because you meet everybody, and it's the first time you're meeting people, and, you know, you look forward to that next event happening.
Take care.